Hi, my name's Josh. I'm on the production team. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe so you can stay tuned for when the next video comes out. I know God has an amazing word for you, so stay tuned and let's get into the message.
The word rallying, it means to bring into order again, to gather and organize or inspire anew, to draw or to call people together for a common action or effort, to concentrate, revive, as in one's strength and one's spirit. I thought it was really incredible to watch the Eagles do that. This whole season, coming out of last season and coming into it, and the way they rallied together, the leadership that we saw both on and off the field. I love that, having a son here in Philly who looks up to these sports players. I thought, what incredible leadership, what incredible character that we see on and off the field as they rally together as a team. And just to provide a quick update on Elijah, so speaking of the Super Bowl, we were cheering last Sunday night, and we were just hanging out for the Super Bowl, and we were at Doc's, and he's yelling and screaming. You guys know Elijah. He's very loud at all times, and so he's loud, and he's screaming, and he's having fun, and he had this moment where he goes, whoa, my eyes. And then we went to Broad Street for a bit. We got home late Sunday night, and he was like, man, my eyes are bugging me. And he's like, I'm going to take out my contacts. And we had given our teams off Monday afterwards, so we're just chilling. So we just kept his contacts in, and he was like, my eye is just, it feels like there's like little like floater. I don't know what it is. And by Tuesday night, about 20 to 25% of his eye was dark. Like not visibly dark, but he couldn't see out it. And so we weren't sure what it was. I said, hey, tomorrow, please go to the eye doctor. It's 2 blocks from the house. Just walk down. And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, no, literally, I made your appointment. Go. So he walks down to the eye doctor, and he gets down there, and he's there for 4 minutes. And they said, hey, we're going to cut to the chase. Your retina has detached, and you need to go have emergency surgery. And so we get to the Wills Eye Hospital, and they're like, when did this happen? He's saying, I don't know. I noticed it a bit Sunday night. And they were like, were you cheering for the Eagles? He's like, I mean, yeah, wasn't all of Philly? And they were like, yeah, you probably cheered so loud, your retina can detach. And I was like, you cheered yourself straight to the emergency room. So I'm like, if you're not the most diehard fan. And so he cheered real loud Sunday. Wednesday we went in. Thursday they took him in for a procedure. The doctors said this procedure went really good, and it went great. It was about 4 hours. He got out. He was on his anesthesia. I will tell you, we talked with him afterwards. Elijah's never had anesthesia. He's never drank. He's never smoked. He does not take pain meds. He's never has foreign substances in his body. So you get anesthesia in him, and it was a wild ride. And I will not tell you what he was saying, but he was very funny because he was very concerned. I'm preaching today. Sean's going to preach next Sunday as he recovers. And he was like, go in for one surgery, and they take my pulpit from me. And he's telling the nurse, he's like, they're taking my pulpit. Don't you think I can preach? I was like, say no right now. Please say the right thing. And so he's at home. He's recovering. His surgery went well. Thank you to those of you who reached out. I will ask you to continue praying. So by the time he went into surgery on Thursday, he had lost about 90% of his vision, as Sean said, in his left eye, and his left eye. And so the surgery went good. Now we have to wait for it to heal. And so over the next couple weeks, we will know how much of his vision he regains. And we're just praying for a total and complete healing. We're praying for a total and complete healing. And that song, I was just bawling as Sean, when the team were singing it, because I thought, that's the God we serve. He's never failed us yet, and he still won't. And we're in the middle of this series, The Gap, and I come preaching to you from the Gap today. It's been that kind of week in the Hollis house, and we're standing here in the middle of it. And I remember on Thursday night, I got him home from the hospital, got the kids situated, laid in bed. And if I'm very transparent with you, I just sat there and I cried. I finally got him calmed down and got him to sleep. And I just cried, and I just was processing through all the what ifs, I don't know if anyone else has ever been like that, if we're honest, but when life hits you like a tidal wave, you're like, what if? what if he can't get his eyesight back? And they're like, hey, he needs to have a procedure on the right eye. And I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, like our house has like 50 stairs. Can he be here? Like, what are we going to do for preaching? What are we going to do for his video? Like what? And I'm just, my mind is what if? And I'm rolling through it. And I sat there, and after a few minutes, I'll be honest with you, I sat there and I said, you know what? No, I will not let the enemy have a foothold. This is what the Bible talks about when the Bible says you take your thoughts captive and you throw them out or you keep them in, right? And there's some thoughts that I said, no, that's not going to have a space in my brain. And I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take it captive, and I'm going to throw it out. And there are some other thoughts of hope and of peace and of strength and of joy. And I'm going to take those captive, and I'm going to put them in my brain, and I'm going to fill my brain. And I was talking to my dad the next morning, and just talking through life with him, and we had to shift around a lot of things. Lige can't travel for about 3 months, they're saying. So we've just shifted everything of his schedule. And so we're going through all of this. And I was just really challenged by this. It's not about the what ifs. I don't know if you ever have those what ifs. What if? See, when we come to Christ and we serve him and we give him our heart, it's not that the what ifs go away. They don't. It's God so spoke this to me the other night. It's what we do with the ifs that is going to change the trajectory of our future. Not what if. It's what am I going to do with the if? And I personally had to take those thoughts and say, no, I'm not going to let this have a place. I'm going to take this if, and I'm going to throw it aside. I'm going to take this if, and I'm going to hold on to hope, and I'm going to hold on to peace and grace and healing. And so I encourage you, grab onto that. Grab onto what you do in the middle of the ifs. I think that many of us find ourselves in the gap as we're in this sermon series right now, the gap. And we're talking about the difference between good and God. The difference between good and God. And we find ourselves in this gap. And as I was studying and preparing for today, God brought me to this scripture, and I would love to read it. If you have your Bibles, turn with me. It's Psalm 118. And I'm going to start the first little bit because I love to preach with context. And so I want you to get the full context of this chapter. But Psalm 118, let's start in verse 1. It says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let Israel say, his love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, his love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his love endures forever. When hard pressed, I cried to the Lord. He brought me into a spacious place. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? The Lord is with me. He is my helper. I look in triumph on my enemies. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They surrounded me on every side, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They swarmed around me like bees, but they were consumed as quickly as burning thorns. In the name of the Lord I cut them down. I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die, but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done. The Lord has chastened me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open for me the gates of the righteous. I will enter and give thanks to the Lord. Anyone else grateful for the God that we serve? He took me into a spacious place. Talk about a gap. Yeah, I was looking up the definitions of a gap. And the gap I feel like that we're standing in right now, and maybe you find yourself here, is the difference between the present and the promise. We find ourselves and we have the present right here, and we have the promise of what God has spoken to us or what God has called us to. I don't know what it is for each of us. It could be something for you in your relationship. It could be something for you and your family. It could be something you're holding on to, a promise that God gave you for your business, a promise for future children in your family, a promise to change things generationally. These promises that we see, and we find ourselves here in this gap, waiting. Like, God, you called me, you told me, you spoke it to me. I knew it was going to happen, and yet we're here. Doesn't that kind of stink sometimes? Like, we just want to teleport to the promise of God, and we want to be right here, right now, yet we find ourselves in the gap. Right now, I find myself standing in the gap for my husband, saying, no, this is the present, this is what the doctors have spoken, but I know the promise, I've seen my God heal, and so I'm going to stand in this gap. You see, a gap has multiple definitions. It says a gap is a break or an opening, as in a fence, a wall, a military line. It says a gap is an empty space or interval, an interruption in continuity, a wide divergence or difference, a deep sloping ravine or cleft through a mountain ridge. I love that because gaps look so different in each of our lives. And sometimes we want to say, well, your gap looks like this, my gap looks like that, and it's easy to look or it's easy to compare, but gaps are always different. If you don't know this about me, I love mountains. I chase mountains my whole life. I grew up skiing Colorado since I was 3 years old, and I have forever, any mountain I can get to, take me to a mountain in Alaska, take me to a mountain, Poconos, it's okay. Elijah gets on to me. I think they're hills, not mountains, but that's okay. I still like to go to them. Just in January, we went to Switzerland and we were skiing the Swiss Alps. And this has been my dream since I was young, was to ski the Swiss Alps. And so we go over there, and man, I started to picture it as I looked at these definitions of a gap, because here, is anyone in the room skiers or snowboarders? Yeah? Okay. So here you ski, and we ski up and down on the front of the mountain. Even Colorado, the Rockies, big, huge mountains, but you're skiing up and down them. So you have your starting point, you have your ending point at the lodge, you go up and you ski down. We get to Switzerland, and I'm looking at the map, and I'm trying to make a plan because I know that the Alps are way bigger than anything we've ever skied. And I'm like, all right, I don't want to get the kids stuck somewhere that we're in a disaster. I'm going to try to figure this out. So I get this map out, and I see that the beginning and the intermediate stuff is like up in the middle, but then all the bottoms are like either blank on the ski map, they don't have any trail runs, or they're like the really hard stuff. And I'm like, okay, if I get my kids up there to ski, how do I get them down? Because if you don't have children, getting your kids on the wrong ski slope, it's a bad choice, okay? I have to tell my kids sometimes, I'm like, look, the only way out is down. Like, just go. Like, we have no other choice. And so I'm trying to figure it out. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And in Switzerland, you have to take this gondola thousands of feet to even get to the first run, because you're passing these crevices and these ravines, and some are massive, and you're going over them, and Zion's there like, he does not love heights, and so he's always like, oh my goodness. And then you have Elijah who's like swinging the gondola, like, this is so fun. And so we're going over these massive gaps, and then we're going over these ravines, and we're going over the rocky slopes. And that's what I picture in this, is that no matter what gap you find yourself in, they're going to look different. It's going to be a big gap, or it's going to be a little gap. But just like Adara shared the story of Paul and Silas, and I was like, I love that God brought me to that this week, because we serve a God of suddenlies. Do you know the word suddenly is used 87 times in the Bible? And suddenly there was an earthquake. And suddenly a fire showed up. And suddenly, and a miracle took place. And suddenly, the water in Bethesda stirred for the lame man to get healed. Suddenly, we serve a God of suddenlies. But the wild part on the flip side of the suddenly is how long we have to be faithful and obedient for the suddenly to take place. That's what happened with Paul and Silas. They're in prison. The suddenly wasn't, I walked in and the jailers couldn't put the, things on my arms because suddenly God showed up. They had to sit in prison. They were bound and they chose to worship until God suddenly brought an earthquake that opened the doors. And so we find ourselves in these gaps, and there's so many people in the Bible that we see in a gap.
Thank you so much for jumping in today. I hope that message was inspiring and just takes you deeper in your walk with God. We're believing for great things for you. So leave a comment so we can pray with you and be a part of your journey. Remember, you got to see the change, believe the change, then be the change. We love you.